So Streamline just dropped one of the more interesting discs I've seen as of recent memory, I guess, probably since the Tilt maybe, mostly because it has some very interesting flight numbers and a very interesting profile. I'm sure many of you have seen it already. This is the Neutron Turbulence from Streamline. The flight numbers, as shown right here, are 7-speed, 2 glide, 0 turn, 3.5 fade. And just looking at it right away, I can already tell it's going to be very overstable. It has a pretty concave like rim and edge here, so I can just tell it's going to be a pretty overstable disc. And then the reason it has a 2 glide is if you look closely at it, it has basically a puddle top. It has a shoulder that's kind of up here, and then it just drops down into the middle. And so it's basically a puddle top, but not a puddle top like you'd probably see on a flat disc that kind of becomes concave. It's more close to like a Pig or a Zone GT, where there's a bit of a shoulder up here and then it drops down and then it's flat the whole way across. It feels really nice, honestly, in the hand. Like, I like to have my thumb right where the flight plate meets the rim, so I'm sitting right on that shoulder. And for forehands as well, I can kind of have my thumb in there. So it feels really good. I'm not really sure what utility this disc provides, so we're gonna try and throw it on a couple of lines here: backhand, forehand, and maybe some utility shots. So some thumbers, we're gonna try grenade, we'll do a tomahawk, maybe a forehand roller, kind of see like where this fits in most people's lineup. Before we do that, I also want to show a couple of the other discs that MVP just dropped. We have some new plastics for some discs I've actually never thrown before. We have the Tesla and the Servo in Eclipse plastic. Tesla 9.5-1.2, so pretty similar in my bag to the CD1, and the Servo 6.55 -1.2. Honestly, not really close to anything I have in my bag, maybe kind of close to an FD, I guess. Both, you know, feel like a normal fairway driver. Pretty flat as well if you want to see either of these. As always, the Eclipse plastic feels amazing. So why don't we just throw both of these and see how they fly. We'll start off with the Servo. We're throwing, I think there's a little bit of a headwind. It's kind of coming and going right now. I don't feel anything. And there's a little bit of uphill grade here, but we're not really going to worry about the distance too much. Oh, that's pretty stable. I kind of expected it to flip up. It did, but it dumped out pretty early, I would say. It didn't really get a full turn. We'll try to throw the Tesla pretty much the same, just kind of like a stock hyzer release, and see how much flip we get out of it. Oh yeah, very overstable. Yeah, threw on a little hyzer, pretty much just rode dead straight the whole time. I'm gonna go pick those up. We'll see how far they went. I threw those, I don't know, maybe about 60-70%, not really full power, haven't really warmed up, but we'll kind of get an idea of how far they went. So both of these went about 340. Again, got a headwind here, a little bit uphill, so probably more like 360, 370 without those factors in play. But honestly, like, they're pretty overstable, more overstable than I expected. I'm gonna throw them again, a little bit more power, see if we can get more of a flight out of them. A little bit more headwind here too than when I first initially threw them, so maybe that helps out a little bit. I haven't thrown these discs before, so I don't know how they're supposed to fly, but to me, based on the flight numbers, they're certainly more overstable than I expected. I remember back when I threw the CD1 when it first came out in the new Discmania plastic. It's the exact same numbers as this Tesla, and I would say the CD1 probably felt like a -1.1 at the time for me, even though I probably wasn't throwing it that well. This feels like a 0.3, honestly. This feels significantly different than that disc. But we'll try and throw a little bit harder, see if we can get like a full flight out of them. I'm gonna go with the Servo here. Oh, that's better, yeah, okay, that flipped up. Yeah, that probably went closer to pushing out to 400 there. So they definitely, like, if you got good arm speed or you're looking for something that fights a headwind a little bit more, these discs seem to be pretty good. I'm throwing into a headwind, throwing them pretty hard. They don't seem to be like necessarily overstable discs. They're flying pretty nice. Now onto the Tesla. Yeah, I mean, still stable though. I got a little bit of turn out of it, but I threw it really flat, but certainly got some more distance going a little harder. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, -1.2, tell me if you've thrown the Tesla, if that's kind of what you run into. That's pretty overstable though. I know the MVP, their Eclipse plastic tends to be more overstable. Anyway, let's get on to the Turbulence. I'm gonna try a bunch of different throws with this thing. I have no idea. I mean, I kind of know what to expect. I think it's gonna be overstable. I think it's not gonna glide that far. I think that much is pretty obvious, but we're gonna kind of see what we can get out of it. So I'm just gonna throw it backhand. I'm gonna throw it hard flat. We're gonna see what it does, and we're gonna measure that. That's gonna be our gauge for how far this thing tends to go. So I'm gonna just start off the rip with a pretty high power, like 80% throw, kind of what I just threw with those two discs. We'll know how far it goes, and then we can try some other stuff. We can do some forehands and some utility throws. Probably helps that we have a little bit of wind. I imagine the idea of this disc is that it fights wind really well. Yeah, certainly very overstable, nothing crazy. I would say about as overstable as like a pretty stable Firebird, like a flat top Firebird, or maybe a Captain's Raptor. But that was nothing like tilt-esque, right? It's not like my deflector where it just dumps out immediately. It felt okay. All right, so we got the Tesla and the servo back. Tesla went about 390, servo went about 380, so very similar. I would say the servo, when powered up on, had a bit more turn than the Tesla. Tesla was a little bit more stable, but both certainly can get out there pretty far if you throw them hard. Pretty good new headwind. Again, they were a little uphill, so probably add about 10, 15 feet to those on flat ground. Now, the turbulence went 330. Like I said, I didn't think it was crazy overstable. It felt good throwing it, so the shoulder didn't really affect the throw all that much. I don't know if it really enhanced it, honestly. Maybe we'll find out as it's starting to rain here a little bit. Maybe that'll help out a little bit with the grip on the disc. Who knows? But, I mean, it flew about as far as I would expect a pretty overstable disc to go. Now I'm going to throw it on a forehand, and I kind of know what it's going to do. It's going to be overstable, and it's going to go probably 300-ish feet, maybe 280. That's not really why I'm throwing it on a forehand. I'm throwing it on a forehand because I want to see how this thing feels in my hand. When I threw the Berg and tried to get used to throwing the Berg, my biggest complaint was that it had that sort of puddle top profile. My thumb would kind of get caught up on top of the disc, and it would rip out of my hand and just cause inconsistencies. And I tend to like my forehand discs, like my Firebirds, to be pretty flat on top so that I can get a nice clean release every single time I throw it. So I don't know if this is gonna help or hurt my chances of liking this disc. We could certainly try it out. Like, is this gonna be its own disc, or is this basically just the 7-speed version of the Berg? Because that's kind of what it feels like to me. So let's give it a forehand. I mean, obviously it's not as extreme as the Berg. It's a narrow rim, it's a 7-speed, so it should feel a little bit better. I don't think it's gonna be that bad. I don't know if I'm gonna love it, but we'll see. So one more note before I throw is, as I'm getting ready to throw, I kind of noticed something is, it forces your thumb to be in a very particular place. You don't really want it to be sitting where it starts to ramp down. You really want your thumb to be in that pocket, right where it sits really comfortably. And so if you aren't comfortable having your thumb in that specific position, backhand or forehand, this disc might be a little bit frustrating. If you're someone that holds the disc on the rim or goes, I mean, if you go way on the inside in the backhand, it probably doesn't matter. But if you're like on the rim here or kind of right on that edge where it feels a bit more tough and doesn't really have much give to it, your thumb doesn't really sit on it as well. Same with forehand. If you like to have your thumb kind of like right there instead of in that pocket, it might not feel as good. And I feel like I kind of want to be just like a centimeter over from where I actually am, maybe like just a couple millimeters, like not very much, but just sitting in that pocket with my smaller hands just feels a little bit awkward. Yeah, that was honestly pretty nice. I felt similarly to how I feel when I throw the Berg, not quite as much, but as I threw it, I could just feel my thumb hanging onto the disc a little bit more. So for that reason alone, probably wouldn't be a disc that I would throw, just because I think, especially when I could run into grip issues, when it's like really warm out like it has been recently, if I'm running into grip issues, I want to make sure my disc is not causing me any problems. And having an uneven top where my thumb is coming off the disc, some people might really like that, and it feels like you're locking into the disc and you get a nice, good grip on it. For me, like, it didn't affect the flight there, but I could just kind of feel it, it wanted to hang on a little bit longer. So if that's something you're worried about, probably not the disc for you. But I don't think this is a disc that you're really throwing off the tee necessarily, or trying to get distance out of. I really throwing forehand or backhand. I think it might be more of a utility disc. So I'm gonna have to run back and forth in this field a little bit, which kind of sucks. But let's throw a couple utility shots. I'm not typically a utility shot kind of person. But let's try a Tomahawk, let's try a thumber, let's try a grenade, kind of see how it feels for those throws, and maybe if this is kind of where this disc lies in being able to throw these utility shots, where normally you'd be throwing a Firebird, but now you have this like really nice low glide disc that'll just go exactly where you want to when you're trying to throw over the top of something. All right, so now we're gonna try throwing a grenade. For anyone that doesn't know what a grenade is, grenade, Tomahawk, I'll just explain all these shots, just in case you're someone new, you're looking at this disc, you don't know what it is. Grenade, you hold the disc upside down, you throw it pretty much straight up and down. The idea is you can go up and over something pretty easily and spike right back down. Because the disc is upside down, it doesn't really glide anywhere, it just comes straight back down. You can do it with flippier discs, but typically you take something overstable and it's just a straight up and down throw. Tomahawk, take a forehand grip, you throw it over your head. It's kind of similar idea of the grenade, maybe a little bit more forward motion. You can get it to pan a little bit more. And a thumber is the same thing as a tomahawk, but just held with your thumb under the disc instead of in a forehand grip, so it's just the opposite direction. Now for grenades, there's two ways you can grip the disc, as many of you know. You can hold it like an upside down backhand, like this, or you can hold it sort of this grip with the disc inside of your pointer finger and middle finger. This is how I like to hold my grenades because it just feels a little bit more comfortable. However, with this disc, because of how concave the rim is, it really pokes into the side of my finger. So if you're someone who holds your grenades like this, I can really feel the disc right there just jamming into my finger right there. So immediately it's already way less comfortable for that. If you're someone that holds your grenades like this, it feels really good because honestly, I'm holding like this power grip and my fingers are all under this little groove right here, and it holds onto it really nice. So if you're someone who throws your grenades just like a upside down backhand, it honestly feels better than any other disc in terms of holding the disc that way. But the way I'm about to throw it, it's kind of hurting my fingers a little bit. We're gonna try throwing it my normal way, and now we're starting to get some wind. So we'll see if the wind affects us at all. I probably haven't thrown a grenade in months, so bear with me here. It bounced off the ground pretty well. So yeah, kind of hurt my finger a little bit. It got smacked around by the wind a little bit, but it really didn't move all that much. Pretty much straight up and down. I mean, probably a pretty good grenade disc. It kind of seemed like it wanted to get moved by this headwind that's coming in, but it still seemed to stay on its line pretty well. So I guess somewhat promising. Go and grab that. Let's try some thumbers and tomahawks. So I am by no means a very good tomahawk or thumber thrower. I've never thrown a thumber in tournament ever, and I rarely throw tomahawks, only in situations where I'm pitching out of the woods. So take this with a grain of salt, but you'll at least see how the disc flies. I'm just gonna go tomahawk over the top, pretty vertical, see how it handles the wind, see if it pans out. I honestly have no idea what it's gonna do. I'm just gonna aim the camera up a little bit just in case it goes too high. I actually don't know if that grenade was in the shot. I mean, I honestly don't know if I did that right. That was really bizarre, honestly. That went up and down, and I expected it to kind of pan out, and it pretty much just turned into a cut roller that I threw like 200 feet before it got down. I don't know if that's a good thing. There's a little bit of a headwind, maybe that had something to do with it, but it didn't really pan out at all. I just threw it kind of on a 45-degree angle, and it just came down on a 45-degree angle. I don't know, let's try a thumber. All right, onto the thumber. Once again, I don't even know the last time I've thrown a thumber. I couldn't tell you. I don't really throw thumbers mostly because I don't think I need to, but also I have like smaller hands. My thumbs aren't that long, and like getting my thumb up under the disc to hold it, like that just feels like so straining. The disc is really pushing in between my thumb and pointer finger into that little slot right there just to kind of hold on to it. So it feels really awkward. I'm surprised people are able to throw thumbers comfortably at all, honestly, because this just feels so awkward for me. Still got a headwind. I'm just gonna throw it how I think a thumber should be thrown, similar to the tomahawk, just over the top, see how it goes. That was actually pretty nice. Very different than the tomahawk. It completely panned out. I didn't get really much distance. It didn't get affected by the wind too much, I don't think. I could see that being useful in some situations. It didn't really get that like thumber skip, but honestly felt like pretty controllable. And I've seen some people say, I've been, you know, perusing the internet a little bit. I've seen some people say that they like this disc for thumbers. I can totally see why. That felt like I had a decent amount of control over it, and it didn't really get affected by the wind, didn't get like too crazy of a skip either. I want to try two more things. I want to throw a forehand roller, and I want to throw one more backhand now that there's a bit more wind. It seems like it's been cutting through the wind really well and getting unaffected by it, but now we have a bit more headwind than when we first threw, so I just want to see if that still holds true. So last thing I want to do here is throw a forehand roller. I saw how when I threw the tomahawk, it kind of held a forehand roller angle and got on cut. in the air like the whole way there. So I'm curious if it can kind of do the same thing on the ground. We're kind of going uphill a little bit here and into a headwind. And in my experience, when I throw like my Firebirds on a forehand roller, if I'm like throwing it off the tee, which isn't often, but I do sometimes, if I try and get it on cut and get it to go far, it often still wants to pick up and turn over. I think it's hard to throw a hard, committed forehand roller on a cut angle and get it to hold that cut angle the whole way. So since we're going into a headwind here, I feel like this should give us a pretty good idea of if this can do that, because if it can, it would be pretty unique. I haven't seen any disc that is able to hold a cut roller when thrown hard and keep pushing straight but just cut a little bit. Like, it's just I feel like discs, it's very hard to do that, and they can be very finicky. If this is as good at fighting the wind as I think, maybe it's able to do it here. So I'm just gonna throw it hard, a little bit of a cut angle. We'll just see what happens. I would say that was pretty good, honestly. I would say typically when I throw a cut roller like that, it wants to pick up a little bit. I think that was honestly, that showed me that this disc is pretty good at forehand rollers. So for all the utility shots, it seems to be pretty unique, seems to fight the wind pretty well. I don't know how like useful it is on a forehand and backhand. Maybe kind of nice to be in like almost like a slower Firebird slot where you want like a really, really controllable disc in the wind. But it also seems to be pretty good for just about any utility shot you'd want to throw. So yeah, that's the Turbulence, the first of its kind, I believe. I haven't seen anything like it, kind of like a fairway driver Berg, pretty overstable, pretty reliable into wind, a little bit bizarre in terms of its feel, if that's something you can get past, and really good for utility shots. If you want to get one, of course, go to otbdisc.com, get one, get either of these two as well. The new MVP drops, the Servo and Tesla in their Eclipse plastic, both fantastic. I don't know what my code's gonna be, but by the time I upload this video, I'll have it. So just look in the description or there, I'll put it on the screen. As promised, the headwind's kind of gone away, but I'll give you one more throw into the headwind to send you off. Yeah, that's pretty overstable. And I scored a goal in the net. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Peace.